Hi, I'm Crystal. I've had a bunch of questions lately from people who are new to die cutting in my real life scrap and stamp group. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about choosing your die cutting machine, what you want to look for, and then actually demonstrate the machine that I have. Because one of the questions I got was whether it was normal to hear a cracking noise when you ran the die through. So I just want to demonstrate so you can hear what it sounds like. So if you're buying a machine, the first thing you have to decide is whether you want a machine that uses dies or a machine that uses digital files. So the machines that use dies would be things like Sizzix or Spellbinders or the Anna Griffin Impress, things like that. And the machines that use digital files would be things like Cricut, Silhouette, the Brother Scan and Cut. Those typically use digital files. So there are pros and cons both ways. Certainly people who use the electronic cutters with the digital files really like them. I sit in front of a computer all day at work, and I just cannot imagine doing that in my crafting time as well. So that's not my jam, but that is a decision point. Dies or digital files. Now, if you select dies, then your next decision point is whether you want a manual machine that runs on human power or an electric machine that you plug in. So there are pros and cons both ways there as well. I think that this is a little bit like choosing a piece of specialty kitchen equipment. So if you are going to peel two apples, paring knife you can also use to peel or cut up a peach or a kiwi. But if you're making apple butter and you're peeling a bunch of apples, you need the specialty apple peeler that you clamp on the side of the table and crank, right? So the electric machine is very useful if you're doing a lot of die cutting, or if you have any kind of physical limitation, if you have arthritis in your hands or your shoulders. The electric machine is great, but it won't do everything. So if you're interested in foiling or letterpress, or you want to use the 3D embossing folders and that kind of thing, the electric machines will not do all of that. So once you've decided manual versus electric, then you have to decide, whichever way you're going, what size opening you want. And so the pretty standard size, the machine that you mostly see is 6 inches wide. So most of the dies that are made will fit in that 6-inch wide machine. But there are bigger machines. There are 9-inch wide machines and there are 12-inch wide machines. And there are also minis. And so some people really like the minis if you're just going to cut sentiments, or if you have an electric cutter for bigger dies, sometimes they want the little 3-inch machine. And those minis are kind of new to the market. They're really proliferating lately. So seems like the 3-inch opening is the emerging standard, but there's a machine out there that's 2.5 inches wide. There's one that is 4 inches wide. So again, I think if you just want the workhorse, the standard, I would go for 6 inches wide, but you've got this range: 2.5 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches, 9 inches, or 12 inches. The electronic machines like Cricut and Silhouette only come in 12-inch wide, or if you get the Cricut Joy, it's 4.5 inches wide. So there's a choice there as well. Now, if I were buying a machine new today, I think what I would buy is a Spellbinders Platinum 6. Those are $120 right now, full retail new. Spellbinders does run sales, so I would be watching for a sale. If you wanted the Sizzix machine, new on their website is $140, or if you are buying from Sizzix on Amazon, a new one is $80. This is very common when you're shopping with Sizzix. The prices on their Amazon storefront are always lower than on their website. And of course on Amazon you would get free shipping as well. I don't know that I would buy a Sizzix machine if I were buying new. That's what I happen to have. But this is what you're going to see used. So if you're looking at thrift stores or garage sales, shopping on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, or what have you, what you're going to see is the Sizzix machine. And this is what I've got, and so this is what I'm going to demonstrate in a second. Now, the electric machines, there are quite a range of those as well, a bunch of different brands. But the real innovator in that space was Crafter's Companion, and the entry-level machine there is about $230. So next, I would like to show you the plates that go with this machine and talk about which ones are really required and which ones are optional. Okay, so partially what kind of plates you need depends on what you're going to use. So there are thin steel rule dies. You know, you're probably familiar with these. You've seen these on videos. There are embossing folders, which is this plastic folder that you stick the paper in the middle of. There are steel rule dies. So this is a Sizzix original when they had the original machine. Here's the current version of a steel rule die. And then here's a Spellbinders steel rule die. Spellbinders does not seem to be making these any longer, but they still have some for sale. And honestly, if you're in a thrift store or garage sale and you see a steel rule die, I personally snap these up anytime I can. They're expensive new, and they cut through anything. Okay, so at a minimum, if you're going to cut a steel rule die, you've got to have a pair of hard plates. I don't know what these are. They just say they're plastic, but they're hard. They don't really bend much. And the ones that I've got right now happen to be a glitter embedded aqua, but they come in all kinds of colors, and a lot of times you see them clear. These are a consumable supply. You can see that these are getting cut up, or maybe you can't see it really on camera, but I'll show a close up. You can see they get cut up, and eventually they bend, so this plate is no longer perfectly flat. But that's the absolute minimum. You've got to have a pair of plates to use a steel rule die. Now, if you are going to use a thin die, you need to close up that opening in the machine with a platform. So the multi-purpose platform is what they sell. It's got a couple of tabs so you can make it a little bit taller, a little bit shorter. You would use the platform, a plate, your paper, your thin die, another plate, and that would be your sandwich. Now, that's the minimum for doing most things. This will cut these three items together will cover the thick steel rule dies, it'll cover the thin steel dies, it will enable you to run an embossing folder. And now we get into the things that are optional. So one thing you can do is you can replace one of your hard plates with the self-healing cutting mat. So this is the one from scrapbook.com. It's called a magic mat. I have linked it below. There's also a version from iCrafter. They're basically the same. They're both self-healing cutting mats. You can also take any self-healing cutting mat you have and cut it down to the size of one of these plates, and effectively you've done the same thing. I think this is the next thing that I would get. The first optional extra I would get is a self-healing cutting mat. You only need one, although often they are sold in pairs. This is see, I have a new magic mat because, again, these are consumable. They get used up and eventually they have to be replaced. So, and then here is my pair of brand new cutting plates because these are consumable and they will get used up. These are clear. Now, next, you can replace your platform. So this multi-purpose platform with the tabs, instead of using this, you can use a magnetic platform. So this is useful for steel rule dies because it holds them in place instead of using tape. So you put your magnetic platform, then your bottom cutting plate or self-healing mat, whichever you're using, and then the thin steel dies stick. So they're held on by magnetism. That was a lot of weight to put on there, but one die at a time will stick. And so then they don't move around when you're running it through. Yeah, okay, that's useful. I've certainly used it. The other option in your sandwich, instead of using 2 acrylic plates on top of your platform, is you can use 1 acrylic plate and 1 chrome precision base plate. So this chrome precision base plate will help you cut detailed dies. Now I think this came out before the Magic Mat, but if I had to choose between the two, I would get the Self-Healing Magic Mat or the iCrafter Self-Healing Mat instead of a chrome base plate at this point. These are costly, and the Self-Healing Mat does basically the same thing. Now, another option is the pieces that you would need in order to emboss a die or a stencil. And for that, you need a slightly softer plastic embossing plate. This is just a little bit softer than these cutting plates. And then you also need a silicone pad. And so you would put this together on top of your platform and put your paper in your die with the cutting side down and run that through to emboss. Optional, kind of fun, you know, but optional. And then you can also add a metal shim. So I have a metal shim, and you can see that I've actually managed to bend my metal shim. So never force things in your machine, otherwise you end up with stuff like this. Yeah, I don't know that that's really required. When I need a shim these days, mostly I just fold up some paper, and my machine is older, so I do sometimes need a shim, but a couple pieces of paper folded together, I've just got this taped shut with some washi tape. That's plenty. So really, a couple of cutting plates, Magic Mat, multi-purpose platform, that's going to get you 99% of the way there. Okay, so now we will take a look at what the die cutting looks like. Okay, so we will start out with our multi-purpose platform. Then I'm going to put my shim, because my machine is a little bit older. And I'm going to put my Magic Mat. Then I'm going to put paper. Then I'm going to choose steel rule die. Then I need a hard plate. So once I've got all that in place, get a crank. Okay. And you can see cut. Some stuff sticks to the die, some sticks to the paper, but you just wiggle that out. There you go, die cut. Okay, that was much more evident, and I think that's because this is such a rectangular die. So I think a lot of times when you're dealing with something rectangular that you will hear more noise. One way to combat that is when you send your die through, angle it on the plate as much as you can, and then you get less of that. Okay. Next, instead of using my platform and Magic Mat, I'm going to take a steel rule die and I'm going to take a hard plate, steel rule die, piece of paper, second hard plate. And die cut. Now, embossing folder. Let's do an embossing folder. Gonna get the multi-purpose platform back, hard plate, embossing folder, piece of paper, and then you usually have to fiddle around with this a little bit to make sure you haven't made your sandwich too tall. Let's see how this is. Nope, that's too much. I'm going to open up a tab. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, I open up my folder and emboss paper.